The first acquisition I went through as an acquired employee was actually not a big deal, right? The second deal, still with the same company, we were sold to what at the time was the fourth largest software company in the world. How that affected me personally is that we were told about the deal, we were told that we had been sold, and the acquirer came in a couple days later and made offers to everybody. And Sandra, my offer was so messed up, right? They messed with my money so much that I wasn't sure I was going to be able to feed my kids, right? I had a 2-year old and an infant at home, and just the pay mix had changed so dramatically that I was like, am I going to be able to take care of my family? Am I going to be able to pay my rent? And the answer was really no, not with how they had shifted the offer. And in their defense, Sandra, they were not buying this firm because Clint Kendrick happened to be a recruiter carrying a large book of business, right? That was not the value proposition. It was the software business taking care of one of the big automakers. And so the organization lost a lot of talent there. My book of business, which was worth about $1 million in recurring revenue, walked out the door. And a lot of other people's recurring business walked out the door. And they just really botched a number of acquisitions in, unfortunately, similar spectacular fashion and drove themselves out of business after a really slow and steady decline. So I've got a lot of passion from a personal experience. Like if I'm going to be doing the same work the next day, why should I be worried that my kids are going to go hungry when they
Right.
were fine the day before? But also, this company, had they handled those acquisitions right, had they handled the people side right, would probably still be the third or fourth largest software company in the world instead
Mm.
of delisted and non existent.
Wow, that is definitely a cautionary tale. Do you think that whoever made you that offer, do you think that they had even done the research and they even knew what the impact was? Just curious.
I honestly don't know. I like to assume good intent, right? I like to assume that people go into those kinds of interactions and they're trying to balance multiple competing priorities. That gentleman whose name I don't remember, I'm sure he doesn't remember me. I could bump into him and we wouldn't know each other. It was that long ago. I like to think that he was trying to be fair and equitable and just bring me into alignment with their compensation. They had a very different business model that they were trying to pull us into, and they were trying to do a day one integration, which usually I'm a big fan of. I think in a lot of cases, that's the right way to go. I just think that the individual impact was something that they hadn't calculated for. And when you don't calculate for the individual impact of one person, now consider multiplying that number by, I think at the time, the company we'd rolled up into had about 2,000 employees. Multiply that by, even if it's a small percentage of the workforce that are upset, let's say that it was 10%, right? You're losing 200 people that are carrying books of business.
Sure.
And just to cite another study, MIT Sloan did a survey of what I call the excess attrition rate from M&A. So how many more people leave after an acquisition event than leave from just due course of business. And that excess attrition rate for individual contributors and middle managers is right around 22%. And if
That's
those
significant.
22% are part of a revenue generating organization, that
Hmm.
revenue walks out the door. If they're part of a product development organization, that know how and your schedules walk out the door. So that 22% excess attrition, and that's from all mergers. Now, can you imagine one done poorly? That's probably up
Right.
around 40, 50%.
Good grief. Yeah, so
Yeah,
the revenue and the institutional knowledge that walks out the door is substantial. That's
right,
why so many of them don't succeed, right?
right.